I'm Shahar Azani, and in the news, Israel at war. It's been 5 months, yes, 5 long months, since the atrocious, savage massacre against innocent Israelis on October 7th, 2023. As Israel continues its attack on Hamas in Gaza, the attacks against Israel and against Jewish communities worldwide intensify. Where do we stand and where do we go from here? To answer these questions and so much more, joining us now is someone who has just returned from an extensive and profound visit to Israel, which included meetings with senior officials, think tanks, and ordinary Israelis on the ground. It is no one else but our dear friend, Dr. Eric Mandel. Dr. Mandel is the founder and director of MEPIN, Middle East Political and Information Network. He's a senior security editor at the Jerusalem Report and a prolific writer and speaker. Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
Always. Thank you for having me.
Let me first ask you immediately, let's go to your trip. What was your impression on the ground, visiting Israel, speaking with Israelis, meeting Israelis from all walks of life? How was that experience? Please share with us.
So I think we in America can at best sympathize with Israelis, American Jews here, or Israel supporters. We can't empathize. So many Americans have never been in war, sent their children in harm's way, that literally, when I saw I was embedded with troops in the north and the south, and I was in Judea and Samaria, they're fighting literally from their homes. I was a short time ago in Margaliot, which is up in the top of the Hula Valley, and I said to a soldier in a bunker looking into Lebanon, "Where's your house?" And we looked through the bunker to the left, and there was his house. And it wasn't the first time. So we really have a very hard time. So I think the first thing is we Americans, we should be humbled before we give advice to people who are fighting literally from three sides at this point of time. I drove from the northern border to the southern border in just a little over 3 hours. The society, getting back to your question, the society is traumatized, but amazingly resilient. And I have to say, and this is going to be something that will, I think, shock your viewers, is I'm optimistic about Israel for the future. I really do believe this society will come together despite all the problems that happened before October 7th and after October 7th. They live meaningful lives and they know what they're living for, secular and religious, right to left. I'm actually optimistic, and we have to look past the immediate, but the immediate is overwhelming.
You're talking about knowing, what you're living for, and Israel has gone from almost, near a social implosion right before that ferocious attack into what we see now. In your meetings in Israel, and I know, you've met with senior Israeli leadership, I'm curious to ask you about meetings you had or conversations you had. You mentioned that soldier with ordinary Israelis. What was their feeling about, I think we see it as overwhelming from all the way from here. You can only imagine what it's like there. How were they treating all of this?
So it depends upon where you are. If you're in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, it looks normal, but they're not normal. They are. It's an amazing phenomenon. You could be in synagogue in the morning on a Shabbat morning, and they're saying the prayers for soldiers who they've lost or for the injured. And 5 minutes later, there's a joy. They're celebrating a baby naming or upcoming nuptials. It's amazing how they still enjoy and embrace life. But the people in the north, there is somewhere between 60 and 100,000 who were afraid to go home. They were evacuated. It's questioned whether they ever should have been evacuated in the first place, believe it or not. But they are going to not be able to go home and feel totally confident. The people around the Gaza envelope, I think they're going to be more confident because I think Israel's presence and probably the buffer zone, which our administration is against, will give them some ability to be secure. But the truth of the matter is, if Israel is forced by the Biden administration not to end Hamas's infrastructure and the terrorists that are there, which is what I saw a report in the Times of Israel this morning saying that they may slow walk the supply of munitions. If Israel is forced to allow Hamas to stay and not look as a victor at the end, it will be devastating for the Israeli people and really hurt American interests, Israeli interests, and Israeli interest in creating a rapprochement with the Arab countries who want to develop relations with them.
Eric, I'm quite shocked with what you just said. The mere idea of Hamas still standing on its weak and fragile feet at the end of this war is something that is completely unfathomable to Israelis. And I'm not just talking about leadership. I know there is a tendency to focus on the political leadership and blame Israel's political leadership for whatever. But the truth is, and correct me if my perception is different, if your perception is different, Israelis, at the end of this war, want to make sure that Hamas is over and done with politically and militarily. There is no way that Hamas can be allowed to stay on its feet. Did you get a different impression being in Israel?
No, that's exactly correct. I mean, I think for Americans, the analogy is, let's imagine that we said with Daesh, ISIS, Islamic State,
Right.
that we were going to finish them with 80% and leave them in some territorial place to continue to launch attacks.
Right.
It's incomprehensible to Israelis. Israelis, once this war occurred, this became 1948. They are in an existential fight for their lives,
Correct.
and that not only for the 7 million Jewish civilians that are there. It's important for our interests, and Israel has to come out of this as a victor. It is perverse to Israelis that the Palestinians should be rewarded with a automatic resumption of the peace process without it's incomprehensible to Israelis, even those who are for two states, for two peoples. And by the way, we can commend President Biden for using the words two states for two peoples. Most people use the shorthand two states, but to the Arab world, two states are two Arab states.
Right. That's very true. So